evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Francesca from St. Paul's Girls' School, and tonight I have the pleasure of being your chair for round 2 of the Grand Finals. Congratulations to everyone for making it to today. Today, I have the honor of presenting a not only powerful public speaker, but philosopher and mathematician Evie from Altrincham Grammar School, who will be delivering a speech on the topic of, is America still the land of opportunity? And the hidden myth of the American dream and what truly lies underneath it. I'm interested to see about how this all affects us, considering that I'm sure many of us in this room today have grown up with the Leviathan of America being fed to us on the daily. Evie has a keen interest in international relations, so there's really no one better to help us explore this incredibly nuanced topic. To my left here is Christiane, who will be undertaking the role of questioner and ultimately help us explore even further into this multifaceted topic. But before that, I'd like to hand it over to Evie. The floor is yours.
In this speech, I will argue America is not, and has never truly been, a land of opportunity. I will give 2 points to support my argument. Firstly, the systemic segregation has created significant barriers to equal opportunity, and secondly, that America is increasingly becoming more economically unequal. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. These are the words of Thomas Jefferson in America's Declaration of Independence, and reflect how America, ever since its conception, has consistently strived to promote an egalitarian society for all of its constituents, is what I would say if that's what Thomas Jefferson actually meant. The reality is that the Founding Fathers were not concerned with individual liberties at all. They instead were pointing out that many other countries had the right to self-government, so America, as a people, should not be denied that freedom either. Furthermore, America's long and storied history of impeding the freedoms of its citizens directly contradicts the idea that it has ever been a land of opportunity. This is because the phrase land of opportunity itself derives from the notion that America provides the opportunity for success to anyone from any background. And the application of this phrase to America is perhaps one of the most blatantly false and legitimately dangerous claims ever made. This leads me to my first point on the legacy of neighborhood segregation. In the 1940s, the Federal Housing Administration provided white families with affordable mortgages so that they could move into suburban neighborhoods. But for black families, even if a move into the suburbs was economically viable, racially restrictive covenants prevented them from buying houses in these now entirely white neighborhoods. It took 30 more years until the Fair Housing Act was passed, but by then, it was much too late. Neighborhood segregation had not only been firmly established, but also black people had been denied the opportunity to profit from and invest in home ownership. It is no surprise that the average net worth of a black family in America is currently 10% of the net worth of the average white family, when the accumulation of generational wealth has been deliberately and systematically denied to African Americans. How can one ever reasonably suggest that America is an egalitarian society when something as surface level as the pigmentation in your skin is enough to prohibit you from achieving the same level of economic prosperity as your white counterparts? Yet this leads me on to my second point. Economic prosperity itself is becoming an increasingly unrealistic ambition for the majority of Americans. In the decades following World War II, America saw its economy boom. At the same time, high tax rates for the rich and effective redistribution measures such as Social Security kept income inequality relatively low. But it was not to last. As the 1970s began, the international economy became increasingly competitive, and so business leaders, in the face of declining profits, financed the creation of an unprecedented number of new think tanks and lobbying organizations in order to sell the American public the idea that helping the needy was a futile aim, that welfare initiatives would make the disadvantaged dependent on the state, and most importantly, that being poor is entirely your fault. The idea that America is a land of opportunity is so vehemently dangerous because it legitimizes income inequality. If everyone has the same chance to work hard and become wealthy, then it must follow that everyone else simply hasn't been trying hard enough, that unequal educational opportunities, a lack of high-paying jobs, and an exploitative minimum wage aren't real problems, that America reserves the right to let its top 1% retain 46% of its entire financial wealth and leave everyone else trailing in the dust. $175 billion is less than 1/5 of the $925 billion America spends on its military budget. It would lift every single American below the poverty line above it. The continued existence of economic deprivation in America is a political choice, and America chooses to prioritize the interests of capital over the interests of its actual population. If this pattern continues, and the net worth of the very richest in America continues to spiral ever higher, the chance that a baby born in the US today will be able to improve the economic position assigned to it at birth will continue to drastically diminish. Yet despite all of the arguments I just laid out, despite the seemingly insurmountable and ever-increasing barriers to equality in the United States, we must still retain the faculty to dream of a better future for its children. After all, it is America.
Evie, I have to say quickly that your speech was far more cohesive and concise than any American political debate I have heard recently. So kudos on not only disassembling, but outdoing an entire political system in under 5 minutes. I think I speak on everyone's behalf when I say thank you, Evie. That was an incredibly rich and nuanced speech, and I'm sure everyone took a lot out of it. John Neffinger is credited would have said that it doesn't matter how elegant the argument or how inspiring the prose. A presentation won't move anyone if the speaker isn't feeling what they are saying. Evie today has not only delivered an eloquent and structured speech, but has embodied the urgent message which she so convincingly delivers to us through her visible passion and enthusiasm. I was particularly interested to hear about the history of neighborhood segregation and how it ties into overall financial inequalities that plague the country. And I'm sure Christiane can help us explore this further. Over to you.
Thank you. As someone who, I'm sure you can tell by my accent, is an American who's fortunate enough to grow up in England and have so many opportunities in this nation that I would never be able to have back in the US, I'm really curious to see how people growing up in Birmingham like Evie view the US, especially since both nations have had such close ties, especially through Winston Churchill. We've seen these ties become even closer as we sort of fight for similar principles of democracy and freedom of choice and freedom of speech, as well as individual liberty. So on that note, why do you think the US has this narrative and not other nations who have similar principles like the UK, considering we also have similar issues when it comes to wage inequality?
I mean, America just has such a completely different history to many other nations. Obviously, of course, there were indigenous people living in America long before the idea of America was even created. But America was founded principally by immigrants, and it's always been about the dream of an immigrant to have a better life than they did before in their home country. For example, the first settlers in America, well, one of the first settlers in America were Puritans who wanted to escape religious persecution in England. And I think that definitely that really helps explain, at least partly, why the American dream and the idea of America as land of opportunity holds such water today in American society.
So just on that, immigration to the US has been known to be quite high, especially in the past sort of decade. So if not for increased opportunity, why do you think there's been such a general trend in large groups of people immigrating to the US?
I think that America, not only it does, at least in the past, provided its constituents with the ability to, as I said, get a better life than they had before, it also definitely sells the American dream to the public too. I think it's very necessary in order to keep the American population happy, to give them the idea that actually they do live in a country of income mobility, when the opposite is actually true. For example, in America, 50% of your income when you grow up can be explained by the income of your parents.
So, considering we've had a lot of discrimination against minorities in particular that you mentioned in your speech, do you think that potentially America being the land of opportunity could be used as a reason why we should alleviate such discrimination and maybe challenge those social norms? And by having that narrative, we can potentially say this is why we shouldn't allow this to happen. Do you think that that narrative could be used for good, or do you think it's something that we should just get rid of?
Well, I think that on one side of the argument, I think America should definitely embrace its immigrant history, and people who already live in the United States and direct lots of hatred towards immigrants should recognize that actually their state was founded by immigrants themselves. But also, I think on the other side of the argument, I do think that America should recognize that it doesn't offer the same economic availabilities to immigrants that it has in the past. Because, as I said, the American dream is, well, you'd have to be asleep to believe it, is a quote I found during my research.
And just one more question. Do you think that potentially a narrative such as America is the land of opportunity was maybe fueled some sort of nationalist ideas, or do you think it's more one that could bring people together in sort of a collective goal for greater opportunity and greater success? Do you think it's one that fuels sort of nationalism or more of a positive patriotic side? What do you think?
Well, I don't know whether I would say that nationalism and patriotism are like two sides of the argument. I think they're almost like two sides of the same coin, to be honest. I think that the rhetoric of the American dream is, however, something that politicians definitely embrace in political campaigns, and they have been for years, to be honest. I think that, I'm not sure, it can give America sort of a cohesive narrative, which is helpful when it is a country that is so large and does have 50 states, obviously. But at the same time, it is also something that creates divisions among Americans when they believe that poor people actually, it is their own fault that they are poor, instead of it being a societal flaws that make it that way.
Thank you so much for that.
Thank you to Christiane for some beautifully layered questions, and equally to Evie for some equally thought-provoking answers. Now I'd like to open it up to you, the floor, in a far more democratic way than America has ever done, to answer any questions that you might have for Evie. Yep, at the front here.
People must similarly look at the UK as a land of opportunity. Do you think the UK is a land of opportunity as well, even though the issues you mentioned were or are much similarly prevalent in the UK?
Definitely not. The UK has almost similar levels of income mobility compared to the United States. Obviously, the UK does have some advantages. For example, the NHS provides free healthcare, so that healthcare systems in America don't, that people in the UK aren't exploited the same way that they are in America by their healthcare systems. But I mean, there are still definitely lots of disadvantages to the UK too. Like 2/3 of the CEOs in the UK at the moment have some kind of nepotism-like quality to their current job station. So I think the UK still has many problems that it should seek to overcome.
Yeah, let's head up at the top there. Thank you.
Thank you. So you mentioned the Puritans going to America, and I think to them they probably would have viewed America as being a land of opportunity. So when do you think that idea kind of died or fizzled out?
Well, I wouldn't really agree with you on that point because most of the Puritans were Calvinists, so that meant they sort of believed their position in life was kind of predestined by God. So I don't think they would have viewed America as the land of opportunity in the same way, more of an escape from persecution. It's just the land of opportunity narrative has sort of increased as the years have gone by, especially with the misinterpretation of the idea that America is a land of equality, as I mentioned in the quote by Thomas Jefferson.
I'm afraid that that's all that we have time for today. So before we finish, I'd like to extend a thank you for Evie for her amazing and informative speech, Christiane for helping us explore this topic further, to our panel of judges who have given up their evening to be here tonight, to the ESU for making public speaking accessible for all, and finally to the Churchill Society. It takes a lot of courage to stand up in front of an audience, to speak your mind, inspire and inform. And every single speaker today has done just that, and will undoubtedly continue to do so in the future. But I'd like to finish off by reminding everyone that this is just the beginning. The conversations that we are having here are important, but they are just the first step. And it is up to each and every one of us to go home and continue the dialogue and to make a real difference in the world. In typical ESU fashion, I'll close with a quote from Churchill. "Of all talents bestowed upon men, none is so precious as the gift of oratory. He who enjoys it wields a power more durable than that of any king." And today, in Churchill's own rooms, we begin to wield our own words and to become more powerful than kings ourselves. Thank you all and have a great evening.